Oh, had myself muted, as is tradition. All right.
I had myself muted too.
Let's turn down these tunes a little bit.
Tunes are getting me in my feels today.
Bro, I'm telling you what. Hello.
What was that from?
That is part of a soundtrack that I have.
As is tradition.
Oh, hang on. I have the stream unmuted.
Muted
Oh, disaster strikes. Okay, we're good now. It is from Journey, though, the video game.
Ooh, you know what? That's one that has long been on my list, but I have not played.
Yeah, so, sometimes when I want to feel inspired while I'm doing I get a lot of window time in my work, and so, driving, and so it's where a lot of like my D&D prep comes in. So I was just going through a playlist, and then that track came on and was like, the inspiration hit, and I was already thinking of like some really cool ideas.
Yeah.
So
Music's powerful, man. Have you played Journey?
I've not.
Okay.
So
I heard good things.
yeah. Welcome everybody to our weekly wrap up. This is the time where we like to, where am I over here? Where we like to get together and just wrap up the week, talk D&D, Critical Role, Worlds Beyond, all the good nerd stuff. With you all, we're a little bit behind the gun today. I had a work event I just got home from, so we had to push back the call about half an hour. And Will, my friend, thank you for being flexible.
Yeah, bro. I think I manifested this by saying it was at 1:30 every week. And now here we are.
That would be it. So I don't have a question in the channel, unfortunately, for today, because everything's been coming together so quickly. I will say welcome everyone for being here, and definitely if you have a question about D&D, a comment about like a theory, what have you, feel free to drop it in the chat, and we'll be sure to get to it today. Do you think it's okay if I eat while we're on this call? I got like a mountain of food in front of me. I haven't eaten anything today. Little Slim Chickens.
You're still going there after
that. Yeah.
After what happened.
Today they did me right though. Today they subtracted 75 cents. So
was it an accident?
I have to imagine it was. But when I asked about it, the person was like, "Oh, well," it's like when you work, like Will and I used to work in a restaurant, and like when someone would ask you a question you didn't really know enough about, but you couldn't just be like, "I don't know." And so the person that when I asked about it, so little context, I got a combo meal at this fast food place. I asked for no drink, which typically, because I don't drink soft drinks, which typically makes it cheaper. And instead they added 75 cents. And on the menu, it said no drink plus 75 cents. To which I was like, "Hey, ma'am, why am I getting charged 75 cents for not getting a drink?" And she was like, "Oh, well, it was total gibberish." And I was just like, and I did one of those things where, like, you ask, like, you're like, "But why am I getting charged more?" And you have like this sense of like, well, this is an hourly employee. Like, how hard in the paint do I want to go here? And so I was kind of just like, whatever, it's 75 cents, even though it's really obnoxious. But this time they deducted 75 cents. So
wait, but on the menu it says there's a 75-cent surcharge?
No, it's like when you order and they list like what you paid for.
Okay. I thought you were saying like on the menu it like has like a warning.
No, like I had ordered my food and it was totaling it in front of me, and it said no drink plus 75 cents.
Right.
I was like, "You're charging me to not take your stuff?" Like,
that makes no sense.
So anyhow, but yeah. So how was your week, man?
Good. My days have been so thrown off since last week, because last week was weird in terms of. Wait, last week was Valentine's, right? Or was that 2 weeks ago now? I'm all thrown off, clearly. I think it was last week. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago.
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay, well, since whenever that was, I've been really thrown off because, and you already know this, but we got Valentine's Day, and then it's my girlfriend's birthday the very next day. So there were a lot of like midweek events, which put me in the mindset of like, it's the weekend,
Yeah.
And I still haven't like recovered from that. So it doesn't feel like Friday to me is the long-winded response I'm getting to.
Yeah.
I still have I got a lot to do, but it's been a good week. I can't complain. How about yourself, man? You know what? Let me add something to that answer. I'm feeling good because we got to get back on our horse yesterday with our pod. I'd been missing that and you, so good week.
It was good. Yeah. Eric with the time is a weird soup. Great line.
Time is a weird soup.
Phil Maddox.
Yeah, what's up, Phil?
Hey, what's up? Good to see you. Have not had Thai food yet, but naturally, I do have fried chicken though, like you did recently. I've had a good week. It's been a very busy week. Very busy week. I had D&D on Wednesday, and there was a lot of prep went into that session. So, and it panned out really, really well. It went really good. So it's always a good sign when, like, as you add like narrative details, people at your table are like, "What? No way!"
Yeah.
So that always feels good versus like when you like. I think we joked about like you name drop like a key character and like there's just like nothing.
Yeah.
You're like, and Sasha's there, your sister. You're like, who is that again? And so
Anyway,
yeah,
engagement is the best, man.
yeah.
I'm glad it went well. Did you have? So you have one group that meets once a month, is that right?
Yeah, I have a group that meets once a month, and then a group that meets every other week.
So do those ever fall in the same week?
They do, and I just have to. One of them has to get pushed either a week.
Okay, so you don't ever do them both the same week then?
Sometimes I've had them because typically we play on Wednesdays, but like on one week that they were on the same week, one of the groups did Tuesday, so it was Tuesday, Wednesday, and that I would not recommend because definitely I was like creative. I was creatively like bankrupt by the end of the second session.
I think I've asked you this, so apologies. But are they in the same world?
No, they are not.
Bro, you're not doing yourself any favors. You can't use any of your same world building.
Yeah, so the world of Valinde is kind of like your more classic fantasy Lord of the Rings-esque adventure. Mm-hmm. And then the world of Dominus is very much like a still fantasy, but there's like it's very, I can't think of the word for it. Like the kingdom is very much like in control of everything. It's very almost like Minority Report-esque, not like futuristic, but like there's divination magic. Like there's a lot of like, man, I can't think today. Propaganda, stuff like that. Yeah. So, and in that world, actually, magic is banned. And that's so cool. It creates this really interesting dynamic of the party like leveling up and getting more magical abilities, and yet in being like this state of we're not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that's definitely a cool dynamic to set up.
Yeah.
You have a lot of spellcasters too, like in the party.
I do. I have a wizard, a druid, and a warlock in that party. So it's fun, but yeah, so I guess that was we got on the podcast this week. We got to do an episode. That was fun. It was weird being gone so long, which sometimes it just happens. I mean, just work gets crazy, but and then I got to jump into the live stream, the live chat in our Discord last night. That was really fun. Yeah. It's always fun
it's fun to have you there.
Yeah, it was.
You got a freaking Discord avatar now. Like,
I know, it's a big.
Times are changing, man.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal, especially. I mean, how long has Discord been around, man? I mean, we're talking. I feel like
a minute.
Yeah, it's been like several years of using Discord without a avatar. So
yeah,
I'm very happy on my first one too.
Yeah.
So
we're glad to have you in the fold now officially with the avatar. One of us.
Yeah. So, when are you and I gonna play a little D&D, buddy?
I don't know, man. I'm down. Whatever.
We gotta do that one shot, which we've been talking about on the channel about doing a one shot with.
Oh, yeah.
With our our viewers.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
So I don't know when we'll do it, but I've been cooking one up.
Oh yeah.
Been thinking of one.
Little homebrew one?
A little homebrew. So
okay. Let's see. Are we close to sorry, not to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna look if we were close to any milestones. It could be cool to do it like in celebration of that.
Yeah.
Maybe like 15 or 20K. Not to get too aspirational out there, but it'd be a good excuse to do it. But what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say something that came up, no spoilers on last night's episode, but this concept of the false Hydra that I had never It's one of those things where like everyone acts like everyone knows about it, and I like you're like, am I an idiot? Like I never heard of this concept before. But I got to reading it last night, read about it this morning.
Fascinating.
My wheels are turning. I'm like, now, like, how do I get this into my campaign? Yeah. But came up in last night's episode. I love this concept from a D&D. I'm very big into like, not just like eldritch horror, but like just very unsettling atmospheric episodes.
Yeah.
Or sessions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I fell in love with, I don't remember when I first stumbled across it. I think it was like on like a creepypasta or maybe like a Reddit post, like a long time ago. And ever since I've been fascinated with it. I don't know if you saw my comment last night.
I did. You said that in our campaign that you were DMing that there was a false Hydra.
So there wasn't like I did, and to a fault, I would say I did too much world building, like things that this is a prime example that never saw the light of day. You know, like I should have been more focused in what I was working on. And so this wasn't like a full adventure I had planned out or anything, but just like in fleshing out the world and building out like different cities and towns and factions and stuff. I did have one in mind that was like being controlled by a false Hydra. So it wasn't even that like they will definitely end up here because this is where the plot is going. It was more so like this exists out in this world. And if they, you know, by nature of their choices end up over there, then they might encounter it type of thing. So it wasn't all that to say it wasn't like immensely fleshed out, but I did have a town that was, you know, occupied by a false Hydra.
How do you fight a false Hydra?
I don't remember all the mechanics, and obviously it's whatever you want because I mean it's a homebrew thing to begin with.
Yeah.
But I think there's like once you come upon like the realization, I think there's like checks that you physically make. I think a lot of it like happens behind board to begin with to kind of like set up the mystery, you know. But yeah, I think you have to beat certain checks to be able to actually perceive it or to like remember things that's making you forget type of thing.
Yeah. Yiklongte, hello. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate you tuning in. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of just homebrew. I feel like I'm a glutton for punishment and that I just can't. I feel like I just can't do like classic, already like in the player's handbook type of stuff. I mean, I feel like I can. I just don't like to. I love like homebrew stuff, and I think in both my campaigns, I have party members who have like homebrew classes or homebrew subclasses, and even just like tweaked things like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. Like, it's the most fun for me to kind of put my own spin on it or tweak it to fit in the box that I've created, you know? Which some people, you know, they don't like to do that stuff, but that's fine. But yeah, I'm with you. It's much more fun to kind of get in there and experiment yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, Rocco.
Yeah.
So, is there anything in our campaign that you wished we had gotten to that we never did?
Oh, yeah. What do you mean? Of course.
Do tell.
Well, I mean, there's so much, right? Like you had a really interesting backstory that I was waiting. And again, this is my problem. I was too big picture a lot of the time. I should have condensed it down. But you and Nate's backstory in particular were pretty deeply, well, not deeply intertwined, but
which Nate? Which one? Didn't he have a couple characters?
The dwarf, the second one. What was his first guy's name? Beck, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Fish guy.
Yeah, Genasi maybe.
Yeah.
Was he Genasi? I can't remember.
I think so. I think he was a water Genasi. I won't get into like the weeds of it here for everyone's sake, but long story short, Blake had a really interesting character that was very conflicted, and was a paladin. So that was kind of an interesting balance to strike because he wasn't a very heroic or righteous character necessarily.
Right.
So for his backstory, I had this, and he didn't know this, but his god, his patron or whatever, appeared to kind of, I think you were getting the impression was like very evil.
Yeah, I think I warlock multiclassed or something like that. So
yeah, I think so that was all. That was all part of it, and it's not that the god was fully good necessarily, but there was like this way higher level stuff going on with the deities where these like alien kind of eldritch horror entities had kind of infiltrated and were like usurping the god's seats of power and obscuring them. So the god couldn't directly communicate with you, so you were getting visions, and like there was like this big like squid monster that seemed evil, but that was partially because of the influence of these eldritch entities, because they didn't want people to trust the gods anymore. So that was going to come in line with Nate, who was also a cleric, I think. So he was very religious, and he had like these visions of these like alien-esque beings like infiltrating temples and stuff in his dreams. And so those were the same like eldritch horrors that were messing with your god too. So, and you know, there's nuance and it goes deeper, but that was one of the interesting connections. And it would be like you finding like the idea was you were very conflicted yourself with your character of like what you were doing. So I thought it would be like a struggle if like you really wanted to fully give yourself to this patron that was evil, but in reality it was kind of in a similar position as you. But yeah, so there was that. There was some really cool stuff with Junket. The leader of Junket was actually a dragon. And he was trying to like amass wealth and like kind of go beyond the typical dragon hoarding wealth in his cave. He was like, well, I can take this to like the industrial level. So if you remember, Junket was like a thriving city in an otherwise like desolate place that nobody wanted. So like he was taking it upon himself to like create his own metropolis in this area. So there was like some cool stuff there to eventually figure out and explore.
It's tough when you have like these really cool story notes that you never get to see fully realized. And I don't even so much mean like the party goes one way, they go from one way to another way, but just like you just don't have the time or the space to do it. And it's tough too, because when you play with people, you have there's an interesting like clock of urgency of like they're almost expectant of like what do you got for me today in today's session. So like you kind of sense that, and you also sense it over like multiple sessions. Like I can't remember what detail happened. Something happened in the story in one of my campaigns, the one that I played 2 years. They were like, wow, they were collecting artifacts, and they had gotten one, and they were like, after 2 years we have just one, you know. And so there's always this interesting dynamic of like keeping people engaged, but also it wouldn't make sense to like the next session like you find another one, you know. So I've always like had a tough time, not necessarily had a tough time, just been very cognizant of how do I toe that line really well. And I don't know the answer, honestly, but
no, I wish I had that mindset more. I mean, I was DMing for you guys was my first time, you know. So I'm very inexperienced, and I wish like that was my big fault. And I think it's because my entire D&D journey was colored by Critical Role. So like when I set out to emulate that, I have these massive overarching plot threads in mind, because that's what Matt does, you know. But obviously my homebrew D&D session with my friends is not Critical Role. And I don't even mean that in terms of like the general comparisons people make with that, but for the fact that they play once a week for 4 years, like you can do those types of things. So that was like the biggest correction that I would impose on myself moving forward now. But yeah, totally. Like that's definitely the struggle of like, you know, you want to have your grandiose plot threads that you can't just throw in one session, because that like even if you wanted to, it wouldn't have the same impact, right? Because part of it is the journey, you know? So yeah, there's definitely a balance there.
And the other thing too is like, there's also this weird dynamic of like, I'd call it micro events. Like you have the grand story, and then the micro events are like the meaningful moments along the way. It's like finding the sub bosses before you get to the actual boss, I guess. Or like the mini dungeons before you get to the actual dungeon. So like you have like these mini moments. But the other thing I run into is, I don't know the best way to describe this. It's kind of like in Grey's Anatomy, where there was just like crisis after crisis, to the point where even like the show became kind of meta, of like the characters in the show started being like this hospital is cursed. Like, why are so many people dying here? Like, what's happening?
Right.
And I've kind of run into that a little bit too, where when the party lingers a little bit too long, like in a town, for example, and it's like, what's the next thing that happens? But we're not quite there yet for like the next big story point. And I found myself kind of being like, now there's this weird tension of like, and here's another thing that goes wrong, where the party's kind of like, this town is super dysfunctional. Like, what is happening? Whoever's running this place is really not good at their job. But I don't really have much of an insight on that other than it's tough as a DM, because I think also Yiklongte says the trope is called lamp shading. I think I haven't heard that before. That actually may be spot on. So I need to read into that. Putting attention on meta tropes that the characters themselves observed. Okay, interesting. What was I just saying? I lost my train of thought. I don't remember what I was just saying. I think you were just
talking about the...
I remember. I think sometimes it's a little bit unfair, and I don't try to be obnoxious about this, but I do think sometimes players... Ideally, a good table doesn't do this, and I have good players at my table, but sometimes people have the perspective of like it not realizing that there's like it's a mutual relationship when it comes to D&D, and like the player who shows up who is kind of like, all right, what do you got for me? What have you done? What have you? It wouldn't be unlike the player who shows up at the table who like doesn't have dice, doesn't have their phone, doesn't have a laptop, doesn't have a notebook.
Well, does have their phone probably.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I see what you're saying.
And it's kind of like, all right, entertain me. What do you got? And if things like aren't perfect, or like, they not necessarily won't let you know about it, but they'll just kind of be like, oh, okay, well. And so I've never really had to be like, hey, everybody, I put a lot of time into this session, so you better appreciate it. But definitely, like, I mean, I'll put several hours into a session. And so I think we talk a lot about being a good DM. Like, there's something to being a good player too, that
certainly
you show up, you can't just show up.
Right.
So
I was actually having a similar train of thought as we were talking about this, and this may be entirely incorrect because this has not marinated at all in my brain. But as I was thinking of this balance between like the long-term plot and like the short-term moments that keep people engaged, I was thinking that obviously for the long grand tapestry, it's the DM. It's up to them to weave that and create that. But I was thinking it might be somewhat on the players to kind of facilitate those moments, because you can do your best to have like not the grand sweeping big fight, but like a cool little event as the DM for this episode. But it's kind of on your players to show up and be invested enough to like RP that moment that brings out or even gives you the opportunity as the DM to do something cool. So I don't know if that's fair to say like grand scheme DM, small scene players a little bit, but
I think it's a great insight. In one of my campaigns, I had this really awesome. I went to lunch with one of my players, and they were like, "Dude, this one session was incredible," but it was mostly around one of my players who essentially like pushed the button. Like the player actually kind of created the button themselves and then pushed the button. And I don't mean that in a way like sometimes you have players who maybe they kind of overreach on, I'm going to kill the king and become the king. And you're like, what? You're level 1. What? But like players who, I think you're right. Like they kind of they riff off the DM and kind of create like these really compelling, interesting storylines. Those are my favorite players, man. Cause it gives me so much content to play with versus the person who gives me nothing. And then they're like, hey, is there anything interesting here for my character? And I'm like, no, cause I haven't given me anything. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, I don't know if it's a grand sweeping generalization that's fair, but I do think it is that like the player that like I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but let's say it's just like a mundane event that happened in this session that is not part of the grand sweeping narrative. The characters, even though it was mundane, could have like a really interesting RP amongst each other based on like how each person reacted to it, And that could lead to some really interesting character developments or insights as the DM that you can latch onto and be like, okay, now I can use that. So in that way, I think it's somewhat on the players to like flesh out their own characters to give you stuff to excite them with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Robert says it's all about balance. The DM needs to know when it's a good time to send in a new problem for the group to fix, or if it's a good time to just let the characters live. I know most DMs will skip that downtime, but personally, I love when characters just get to exist and live a normal life for a few sessions. I think it's a great insight. Yeah, letting kind of things, the story soak in a little bit. So it comes back to having a great table, I guess.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That like as Critical Role, for an example, I know some people like can't stand the shopping episodes, but I love them because I love to kind of just see the cast kind of chew the scenery of like mundane moments like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that is entirely on your table, I would say, because as a DM, you could say, all right, we've got 3 days in this town, and you could have like no catastrophe happen, and it's just like, what do you guys want to do? And some players will be like, okay, I want to go. Let me go talk to that librarian. And, or some players are just gonna be like, I don't know, like, I guess let's just go to sleep for 3 days. So
I love when there's like,
totally
on the flip side, I love when there's like been some serious stuff that's happened and you're like, do you guys talk about anything? And they're like, no, we just travel in silence for 2 weeks. Okay. One of your players died, by the way. So like, we're good.
It's rough. Yeah. Sucks for him. Anyway,
well, as we move towards the end of our stream today, a couple things in the gaming world. Have you checked out? You thinking about checking out Helldivers?
Oh, yeah, I do want to. Have you played it anymore?
I played it a couple times solo just before going to bed. I'm like just at the point as of today that my schedule's like really lightening back up again. Yeah. So I probably will this weekend, and it's a really fun game. It's a very fun, just like, kick back on your couch and just mindlessly kill bugs. So
yeah, I want to get it. I've only heard good things, and it's been funny to see like the content being created around it. I don't know if you or anybody that's watching has seen it, but like it's just like it's one big family. It seems like everyone's like, come join the fight. Like there's not that, I don't know. The gaming community can be toxic at times. So it's just been like kind of refreshing to see like literally the entire community kind of like really buy in, and they're like in character when they're talking about the game. So it just seems like a fun thing to be a part of.
Eric says Pacific Drive is on my watch list. Is that a game?
Have you heard of that? It is. I need to check that out. Clem and I usually have similar tastes in games that we like, so
okay.
Knowing absolutely nothing about the game, Pacific Drive, I feel like I would like it. Like I'm imagining kind of like a mellow indie game, but
and then
maybe it's a high octane racing game for all I know.
And then Final Fantasy VII Part 2 is releasing, I think, in 6 days. I think next Thursday. I think it's the 29th, maybe.
Horror survival. So
very mellow.
Very chill. Wind down with that one.
Yeah. Just take it easy with that one.
You and I have talked about this briefly, but I think the other day you might have asked me what one of my favorite childhood game was, and I said Final Fantasy VII. So like I really want to play the remake, but I don't have a PS5, which means I had to wait for the PC port. And the first part has been ported to PC, but it took like a year or longer for that to happen. So like even though Part 2's coming out, I can't play it anytime soon. So I'm like, I mean, I could play Part 1, but then that's going to make me antsy to play Part 2. So like I'm trying to wait till it's all done, but like and before it's all out on PC is probably like 4 or 5 years from now, right?
Be a long time for sure.
So because I don't know, I might just cave.
It's been like 3 or 4 years since the last one. So yeah. I mean, we're talking quite a while.
I want to play it though.
I mean, you might like wait a little bit until Part 2's ported, and then you can just play Part 1 and 2, and then maybe that way you'd only have like, a couple years lead time.
But maybe I'll do that.
The first one was a great game. It had a really good like ending point. So
they are like standalone in a way.
Since you've played Final Fantasy VII, I would say no, in that you would know. It's like when you change from disc 1 to disc 2, like remembering there's like 4 discs, like you would be like, oh, this is like a natural breaking point, but there's a lot more of the story to be told. So it wouldn't be fair to say like it's standalone in the sense of like the story's over. It's very much like you're changing from disc 1 to disc 2. However, the way they do it though, it doesn't feel like, well, wait, it's over now. Like it feels like a good ending to that arc, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So they've done a good job with it. Well, with the first one at least. But
yeah.
Phil Maddox asked, "What's your favorite episode or arc from C3? I've loved every second of the Shattered Teeth, and From the Earth, of the Earth, to the Earth is my favorite episode." Can't remember the number. What would you think?
I don't know, man. It's hard for me to pick stuff like that.
I love that that Matt brought Hydroga back. It was just a nice little detail that I appreciated.
Yeah.
So
I liked that as well. Man,
I really liked the ball episode. Or episodes. I think it was a couple episodes. Like episode 15 maybe in Dressar.
Oh yeah. I didn't know what you meant by the ball, but now I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were fun. I want to give some sort of answer. I don't want to completely cop out here, but this is something that I would like need to go back and remind myself and like really look at to give like an answer I would be happy with. But gut instinct, I really liked. I mean, the singular moment that immediately came to my head was Vaxel Dawn. Like that is one of like the top moments in all of Critical Role for me. That's not to say that like episode as a whole was like the greatest singular, that bottle episode or anything, but that moment certainly stuck out.
The Don't You Dare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I really I think the vibe of some of those early episodes were great, like learning the characters and stuff. And I wouldn't say it was my favorite, but also all the different guests that have come through have been really fun. Emily Axford and Utkarsh. Yeah, so I don't know, man. I know that's not the best answer, but it's the best I got for you right now.
Even though, and I was one of the people being like, all right, I think I'm ready to move on. I really liked the Team Asilra episodes too. I liked the Wildmount ones too, but the Asilra ones felt, I don't know if darker is the right word, but just like,
I mean, definitely, in my opinion.
Yeah, I loved Amy Carrero, who's coming back for Candela, which is fun.
Yeah.
And Utkarsh, I can't think of his last name. Emily Axford too. They were all great, but I enjoyed that table. But
same.
All right, well, friends, we're gonna start wrapping up here. If you enjoy our stream, we stream every Friday, and I guess our next video will probably be Worlds Beyond, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, and then we shouldn't be too far away from Critical Role. Did you watch up through the break?
No, yeah, through the break, but I didn't see the second half yet.
Yeah, so I don't have too much. I watched a little bit of the second half, so I don't have too much left of that one. So you guys can expect our Critical Role episode, Worlds Beyond. I don't think we're doing a Sunday Funday this Sunday, but I'll go ahead and recommend that we do Blue Sub 6 a week from Sunday. That way we have some time to promote it and prep it, but it's an old little anime that's from years ago, but anyway.
It'll be fun.
Anything else other than that?
I don't think so.
I would say you all don't forget, tune into the Discord and feel free. We have so much chatter and discussion. It's a pretty toxic free Discord. People are pretty nice and kind, and so we try to keep it that way. So you can always check out the Discord, and if you like D&D, Critical Role, Worlds Beyond, nerd stuff, whatever, we have a spot for you.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right.
Now we both got avatars. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will catch you all later.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.